All right. Good afternoon and welcome to Miss Walker's Story Time. This is my book, Ban This Book, that I've been reading with our fourth and fifth graders. We are going to be starting with chapter 31 today. Be sure if you come in a little late that you use the chat box just to type your name or just say hi so I know you're here. Remember, I pass along the information of who attends the live sessions with your teachers just so that they know who's participating. Remember, while I'm reading, I ask you not to type in the chat box just because it distracts me because it pops up on my screen and gives that little ding sound, and then I get distracted and I lose my place while I'm reading. So I'm glad you all have all joined me today. I'm excited to see all 14 of you guys. So here we go. Chapter 31, New Customers. After lunch, Jeffrey sat by himself. He was the kid that got expelled before, and he's back now. He had friends before, other kids who liked talking about the same kind of movies or show he did, but no one wanted to sit with him now. Jeffrey seemed to want it that way. He picked fights with anybody who hung out with him too long. Started across the room at Space Cadet Jeff, feeling sorry for him. He was always a nice guy before. It had been a while now, ever since that day we both got called to the office. He wasn't angry before that. What had Principal Borowski been telling him when they came out of the office? Something about how she was sure his grandmother had been a nice person? Jeffrey's grandmother had died. Was that why he was so mad? I could understand being sad, but why was he so angry all the time? Then I remembered the books I had read about where people die. Sometimes the characters refuse to believe it. Sometimes they just go to where they shut down and don't want to do anything. And sometimes they get really angry. I had a book like that in my locker. In fact, after lunch, I wrote a note that said I wanted to talk and left it at Jeffrey's mailbox. He met me at the locker after school with a note in his hand. What? He said. Hey, Jeffrey, I said. I didn't know where to start. Um, I know your mother died. Your grandmother died. Jeffrey looked away, staring at the locker. So, well, I just wanted you to know that I know what you're going through, I said. His eyes flashed at mine. I saw Jeffrey, who'd gotten suspended for fighting. Oh, yeah? Did your grandmother die? No, no, I said. Then you don't know. But I've read about it in a book. Jeffrey snorted and looked away. I opened my locker and showed him the book. Mr. Bear opens a bank account, he said. Oh, no, that's the fake cover we put on it to fool the teachers. I opened it to show him. It's called Bridge to Terabithia. I think you should read it. Jeffrey looked at the book in my hands, but didn't take it. It sounds stupid. It's not. It's really good, I told him. It's about these two kids who invent a pretend kingdom and become king and queen. I think you'll really like it. I held the book out to Jeffrey, and he finally took it. Maybe I'll read it, he said. Okay, I said. I hoped you would. Jeffrey turned and walked away. Trey McBride was standing behind me. I jumped out of my skin when I remembered to slam my locker shut and slip on the lock. Hey, Trey said. Hey, back, I said. Tried not to sound nervous, even though I was. Every time I turned around, there he was. He stood there for a few seconds just looking at me, but not saying anything. What did he want? Our First Amendment project was already finished. I want to borrow a book, Trey said. What? I swallowed hard. The school library is right down the hall, I told him. I want to borrow a book from you, from your locker. I don't know what I want to borrow Captain Underpants, he told me. I know you have it. Trey flipped up the gold Eagles #1 sign on my locker and pointed to the list of banned books on the back. The green dot means you have them, right? I want to read this one. My own little patch of quicksand started opening up underneath me because remember, Trey's the son of Mrs. Spencer, who's the lady that's trying to get all these books banned. Trey knew all about the BBLL. Did that mean his mom knew too? Maybe she did. Maybe Trey had figured it out and told his mom instead of going to the principal. She'd sent him here to check out a book as evidence. I shook my head. I was beginning to think like Rebecca. No, you don't have it, or no, you won't let me check it out, Trey asked. He'd taken my head shake for a no. I didn't want to tell him. If I gave him the book and he took it to his mom, it was all over. I was in big trouble. What if Trey really wanted to read the book? Didn't it all start when he checked out Captain Underpants from the school library to read it? I'd gotten to know Trey working on our First Amendment project. I had actually started to like him, despite drawing me as a mouse in third grade. And it was Trey's mom who'd banned the books, not Trey. Maybe he didn't agree with her at all. Maybe he just wanted to read Captain Underpants. That's why I wanted the banned book locker to begin with, wasn't it? So anybody who wanted to read books banned from school library. Trey looked disappointed in me and turned to leave. Wait, I do have that one, and you can borrow it. I was saying all kinds of crazy things out loud these days. Spun the dial on my lock and yanked it open, got out Captain Underpants. Trey's eyes lit up. Do you have the fourth one, Captain Underpants and the frivolous plot of Professor Poopy Pants? I did. My big mistake. I knew I was in trouble the moment I set foot in the building on Monday. It was the way the other kids stared at me and turned to their friends to whisper, the way everybody moved out of the way like I was Hagrid parting the ways in Diagon Alley. It was the way my sneakers squeaked loud enough for me to hear them in the quiet hall. A chill ran down my spine. I got goosebumps, and not the ones that R.L. Stein kind. My footsteps slowed and my heart pounded in my chest. Something was wrong, very, very wrong. I turned the corner and saw Principal Warinsky standing next to my locker. Mr. Crunchford, the Shelbourne custodian, stood next to her with a long-handled metal cutter she used to cut off locks when kids forgot the combination. No, I thought, no, no, no. Mrs. Olanger, Mr. Warinsky said, I need you to open your locker, please. I started crying. I couldn't help it. Even everybody was watching. Tears streaming down my face. I sobbed at once. This couldn't be happening. Mrs. Warinsky wasn't standing in front of my locker telling me to open it. I was still asleep. I was dreaming. I had to be. This was a nightmare. Because of Mrs. Bransky was there telling me to open my locker, it meant it was over. Mrs. Olanger, if you don't open the lock, I'll have to ask Mr. Crunchfield to cut it off. I started to say something. I wanted to do something, but all I did was stand there and cry. I barely aware of the other kids gathered around to gawk. All right, Mr. Crunchfield, Mr. Principal Winsky said. Though watery eyes, I watched him clip the cutters off my locker and squeeze. The locker popped and Mrs. Winsky removed it. The hallway was completely silent as Principal Bornsky opened my locker. The click of the handle of the locker opened quietly. It sounded like handcuffs going to my wrists. I wanted to fall on my knees. Where was my quicksand? I wanted it now. I wanted to be swallowed up by the ground and disappear forever. But there I stood, watching through my tears as Principal Warinsky pulled books out of my locker. The covers didn't fool her for a second. She already knew. She opened up one and then another and then another. Still, until she was satisfied they were illegal books. They were. My locker was stacked full of them from top to bottom. I let my backpack, filled with my books, slide to the ground. Mr. Crunchfield, if you will collect all these books in the locker and bring them to my office, said Provincial Bursary. Mrs. Olanger, you need to come to the office with me. We'll call your parent. I followed along numb. I saw Rebecca, her hand to her mouth, tears running down her face. I saw Danny, whose pained eyes stared out from under his perfect hair. I saw Javi, Jana, Parker, Sophia, Felicia, TJ, and a bunch of other people who'd borrowed books from the BBLL. They watched me get taken away like a criminal. And there, at the end of the hall, was Trey. His mother stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders, looking at me like I'd slapped her in the face. Loaning a book to Trey had been the biggest mistake of my life. Chapter 30 Wood 4 Busted. My parents were called in. Mom had to get pulled out of meeting. Dad was still in his work overalls and his hands were covered in brick dust. At first, they thought I was hurt or that someone had done something awful to me. They never guessed I was the one who'd gotten in trouble. I was Amy Ann Olinger. I was a girl who always did what her parents and teachers told her to. I was the girl who never complained, never spoke up, never said what she was really thinking. Mrs. Baranski showed them the books and told my parents what I was doing. My parents looked at me like they'd never seen me before. Some of these are Shelbourne Elementary books, Principal Basky said, as she had separated them out on the stack on her desk next to the grinning banana sunglasses. They were all books we'd taken from they were all the books we'd taken from Mrs. Jones's office, minus the ones we checked out. But did Mrs. Jones give these books to her? You? No, I said. I didn't want Mrs. Jones to get into trouble over this. That thought made me even sicker than what I was getting caught for. So, are you saying you stole school property then? Mr. Prinsky said. I didn't say anything. Amy Ann, this is no time to protect anybody. Mrs. Jones is an adult. She's responsible for her own actions. She didn't know, I said. We took the books from the library. It's not stealing if you borrow a library book. That's what they're for. Who is we? Mrs. Bransky said. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I hadn't meant to say that. Nobody. I did it all by myself, I said. Mrs. Bransky frowns. You're not going to tell me who else was in with this with you. I hesitated and shook my head. Amy Ann, Mom said, I didn't care how much trouble in. I was going to get in. I wasn't going to drag Rebecca and Downy down with me. We'll find out, said Prince William. We'll get back to the back. We'll be able to get back all the books she loaned out to other students too. We have a list of students who checked out the books from her little illegal library. She lifted a stack of the index cards, my due cards. I closed my eyes and tears came again. I should have listened to Rebecca and never leave a pencil trail. I'm going to have to write a letter home to the parents of each of these students. Amy Ann explaining how inappropriate and potentially harmful book came into their possession at my school, said principal. There may be lawsuits. You've hurt a lot of people with this little stunt. Principal Brownsky waited for me to say something in my defense. I was done speaking up for good. As this is Amy Ann's first major offense, she won't be expelled. But theft of school property and willing defying Wake County School Board, Amy Ann is suspended for 3 days. Chapter 35, Right and Wrong. I couldn't very well say that my dad stay at my dad at the construction site, so I spent the day in my mom's office. I did homework Mr. Vaughn had sent home with me, then hid in the corner reading Indian Captain, which I checked out from the real school library. When I finished it, I read it again. Like Amy Mary Jimerson, I swore I would bear my pain quietly, without complaint. If I had been quiet before, I was going to be silent now. Speaking up got you into trouble. Mom didn't say much to me all day anyway. I could tell she was thinking about what to say and how to punish me because getting suspended for school wasn't going to be enough. Parents can't ever let bad stuff that happens when you make a mistake be all there is to it. They always have to add some old punishment of their own to remind you that they're in charge. That afternoon, I went to my room without being told to and crawled under the blankets on my bed. Normally, Alexis would have been using my bed for ballet bar, but today she kept away. She snuck in once to get her tutu and slipped back out again without saying a word. That was fine with me. I tried reading Indian Captain again. I couldn't focus on it. All I could think about was all the kids who'd borrowed books from me. They were all going to get a letter sent home, and a lot of them were going to get in trouble. And it was my fault. Everybody who'd started to like me was going to hate me now. Dad brought me my dinner on a tray and told me I was to come see him and Mom both in the kitchen when I was done. No matter how slowly I ate, I knew I couldn't put it off forever. Halfway through, I couldn't eat anymore anyway. It was time to face my parents. Dad was doing dishes when I came in, and I sat at the table, and he called Mom in and dried his hands. The air was much heavier in the kitchen, like someone had just died. Angelina appeared in the doorway. Is Amy Ann in trouble? I asked. She asked. Yes, genius, I thought, but I didn't say that. I was done talking. Go back to the living room, Mom said. Alexis, come get your sister and keep her in the living room, please. There were going to be no witnesses to my execution. When Alexis and Angelina were gone, Mom and Dad shared another one of those looks. This one I could read. It said, we better get this over with. I started to suck on my braids, but I knew that would just make Mom more frustrated, and so I fought the temptation. Amy Ann, we don't know where to begin, Dad said. We're just so shocked you would do this. It's so unlike you. I didn't say anything. And we're very disappointed. We expected better of you. We expected you to set an example for your sisters. I didn't think I had any tears left in me, but I started crying again. On the other hand, we're proud of you for taking a stand. Mom and Dad shared those looks between them. Frankly, we were getting worried that you would never stand up for yourself, never speak up. I hiccuped a sob. What good does it do to speak up when no one listens to what I'm saying? I thought, but I didn't say it. Keeping all that inside isn't healthy, Mom said, and we agree there are times you have to stand up for what you want or what's right. We don't necessarily agree with Principal Wensky and the school board on banning book business. I sniffled and rubbed my nose with my hand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wasn't going to get punished, but there's a right way and a wrong way to voice your objections, Mom said, and this banned book library in your locker was the wrong way. Right. So I am getting more punishment afterwards. You broke the rules, kiddo, Dad said. Right or wrong, the school board made the decision that those books weren't appropriate for the elementary school students. You have to respect that decision, Mom says. You can't decide what an adult tells you is wrong and do whatever you want. What if the adult was wrong? Mom and Dad just said they didn't agree with the school board. What if adults didn't play by their own rules? What was this kid supposed to do then? Just give up? Do whatever they said? I wanted to argue with them, but I didn't. I just sat and stared at the table. We'll deal with whatever else comes from this, Dad said. I think Mrs. Borowski's threat about lawsuits was a bit much. But I do think there's going to be some pretty angry parents. That little woman who spoke at the school board meeting isn't going to be happy. I didn't really care how Mrs. Spencer felt, or her stupid son for that matter. There's something else we need to talk about, Amy M. Something that is more disturbing to us. In talking to Principal Winsky, we discovered you haven't been attending afternoon school activities like you told us you were doing. I reeled. On top of the BBL suspension, I was totally blindsided. Why are you staying after school if you're not in those clubs? Dad asked. Because I need time by myself, because I don't have a quiet place in my own where I can curl up in the corner and read a book. I wanted to yell at them, but I didn't say anything. More than anything, I think it's the lying that hurts me most, Amy, and my mother said. I started to cry again. I couldn't look at either of them in the face. I felt sick for lying to them. Your father and I have decided to ground you for a week. We know it doesn't mean much, though, since all you do is sit in your room is read books. So we're not going to allow you to read anything that isn't school for a school assignment either. I felt dizzy. Not read for an entire week? What was I supposed to do? How was I going to survive? I was suspended. Everyone at school hated me. I had nowhere to hide. My books were all I had left. My sobs overtook me. The phone rang and Dad got up to answer it. Hello? Yes. Oh, no, I don't think that would be a good idea. No, thank you, but no. He hung up. That was the local news. The story's out. They're calling to see if they could interview Amy Ann about the locker library. Great, Mom said. That's all we need. All right, Amy Ann, go to your room. Tomorrow you'll come to the office with me again. Bring your school books and no other books, understand? I nodded and hurried away. Alexis wasn't in our room when I got there. I ran inside and threw myself on the bed, burying my face in my pillow to cry. I'd ruined everything, everything. My friends were never going to talk to me again. My parents were never going to trust me again. Nobody was ever going to think of me as the good girl who did what she was told again. The dogs hopped on my bed and stuck their wet noses around my neck, trying to make me feel better. Amy Ann? It was Angelina. She was standing in the door to my room. The dogs must have come with her. She and Alexis must have been loving this. Go away, I told her, and put my face buried in my pillow. The dogs lay down with me, and the room got quiet. I guessed Angelina had gone. Then I felt something rub my arm, something soft and furry that wasn't the dogs. I opened my eyes. Angelina was gone, but she had left her favorite stuffed pony to make me feel better. All right, guys, we are on chapter 36. And we have been reading now for about 20 minutes. Do you all want me to keep going with another chapter, or are you ready to take a break and we'll pick up this on Thursday? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. What do you think? Do you want to read the next chapter, or you want to wait and do it tomorrow? All right. Well, we will stop there and we will pick this up tomorrow.